Hi everyone, welcome to the Rangers Reviews morning briefing on Wednesday, the 2nd of August. It's myself and Euan Robertson this morning for the first time in a while, building up to the start of the season on Saturday. Lots to talk about as ever. Euan, good to have you with us. How are you doing this morning?
Yeah, it's good to be back with you, Josh. We've both been on holidays, and this is
Yeah,
probably the
yeah.
first time in over a month that we've been on together. So, yeah, enjoyable.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Just a reminder before we start, folks, that until tomorrow, you can take advantage of our subscription offer on the website. It is £12 for 12 months, £1 a month for top quality content every single day. Loads of content on there this week already. We've had a piece I've done with Danilo's ex-manager, which we're going to talk a bit about today. Today, you've got Four Lads column on the season ahead, much more as well. Lots of tactical pieces, in-depth features, interviews, match coverage, you name it, is on there. You can take advantage of it and take advantage of the pieces that we're discussing in today's episode in the comments section below. Euan, let's get right into it. I guess the big news this week is everyone's waiting for Cifuentes to hold up a Rangers scarf, and everyone's waiting for Kilmarnock to face Kilmarnock 5:15 on Saturday. We're going to get into that, and we're going to have loads of coverage and build up right throughout the week. We'll have more coverage on the members section of the YouTube page as well. But before we get into all that, I want to talk about the piece we had on the website yesterday, which was with Danilo's ex-manager. We did a similar piece when Nico Raskin arrived, speaking to his ex-manager, titled something along the lines of managing Nico Raskin. And so much anticipation has followed this signing. I don't think I've actually been on the channel since, or maybe I have been once since it was confirmed. But so much anticipation has followed this arrival. One of the most exciting transfers I can remember coming to Rangers in the last number of years. You've got someone who's 24. He's a Brazilian number 9, which always gives you, I guess, that added excitement. He comes off the back of 2 titles in the Eredivisie, and yes, admittedly didn't play that much at Ajax, but again, you look at the comparative level of that league, you look at his loan spell with FC Twente, and it's really exciting. I mean, you were there, you saw flashes of him on Saturday, Euan, and we'll get into the piece, but this is, I think, a deal to really get to whet the appetite ahead of the new season, even if the defence still, some concerns remain there.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's the signing that sparked the most excitement amongst the fan base. I was getting the plane back from Dusseldorf on, I can't remember what day it was, maybe Sunday night, and all the fans were singing about was Danilo. I think they've got a new song on the way, which might be in full force at Rugby Park on
Yeah.
the weekend. But yeah, I mean that was the kind of first glimpse that I had of him, in person on at the weekend. And there was one moment really where he kind of plucked the ball out of the sky, and he had shifted his body and created space before laying a pass out wide, and you thought, look, this boy's got a bit. In terms of kind of acclimatising to his teammates, yeah, that might take a while yet. But I fully expect him to. Do I expect him to start on the weekend? Yeah, I
I don't
probably
know.
do.
Do you?
Yeah, I think
I
I
don't
do.
know if I do.
No.
Well, I just think that Beale's made quite a point in the last few weeks of saying, he's mentioned a few times Dessers and Sima have had a full or ahead of everyone. I think it'll be fun to see those 3 start together, which we'll get into, but I don't know. I'm not totally convinced.
Yeah, I think it's a good point actually, because if what Beale said to us after the game at the weekend was that Sima and Lammers were probably had completed every single session, since he joined the club. I think Dessers has been was carrying a little bit of an injury over the summer. I think he's a little bit behind. I actually thought he was a little bit off the pace at the weekend. Just generally his touch and stuff like that, I thought he was a little bit off his level. But I mean, I'd expect Dessers to play. So I suppose the conundrum for Beale is, does he want to maybe keep a weapon on the bench just in case? The game's not going the way that he'd envisaged, and he wants maybe to bring someone on to make that impact. And if you're bringing on someone like, Danilo, that would get the fans up, get the players up, and you're bringing on some real quality. So, yeah, it's a good point, actually. Now I retract what I say. I think that Danilo might be on the bench, and then they'll save him for either Genk or Servette on next
Wednesday
Monday.
night, which is a huge game. Listen, I want to get into a little bit of the piece yesterday. I've got a radar I'm going to put up as well, so I know some people in the comments might be allergic to stats, but hopefully some people like it. In effect, if people haven't read the piece, you can do, and it's linked in the comment section. But Danilo's kind of breakthrough season came at FC Twente in the 2021 season, I think it was 17 goals and 5 assists, especially in the first half of the season. Really announced himself as a player. So great to speak to the man who managed him that season, Ron Jans, I think it's pronounced, who very generous with his time. And great to get this level of insight, because not many people are going to know a player like Danilo quite like the person who managed them, and managed them, especially in that breakthrough season so recently. And we spoke about what he's going to bring on the ball. We looked through specific clips, specific goals that highlight what Danilo's about, what Ron calls classic Danilo goals. And we spoke about all aspects of his play, one of which being his pressing. And I want to bring this up first and foremost, Euan. I'm going to explain this to people if they're a little bit confused by it at the outset. But radar, which we use all the time in the sites, in effect, the closer to the boundary line, the better. The higher the percentile, which is obviously to the right of the value, the better. And it's compared to other strikers in the league. And this is Danilo at Feyenoord last season. Now, he played the first half of the season before kind of getting usurped by Jimenez. And Jimenez, 22-year-old, I think he's played 20 times for Mexico already. I think Danilo arrived probably with the expectation that he was going to have to compete for a starting spot, as opposed to being given it outright. And what his ex-manager said to me, and he obviously kept up in his career quite a lot, he was still managing in the Eredivisie last season, so he faced him, was that alongside the goals, and we can get into talking about the type of goals he scores, it was actually Danilo's pressing and his ability off the ball that really led to him being the starting striker. And if you look at the two numbers that stands out, you've got his expected goals, his shots, his touches in the opposition box are all high, close to the 99 percentile rating. Especially, I think, touches in the box. You look at how often he's there. This isn't a striker, I think, like Lammers, who's going to spend the majority of his game outside the box. He's someone who will occupy the last line and look to link with one-touch passing, and he is a pure number 9 in that sense. But also, if you look at his pressure regain number, as high as it can be, 99th percentile, 4.35. Pressures per 90, 22.45, which is really high for a team that's going to have a relative amount of possession of the ball. And to me, Euan, that just really stuck out when I was speaking to you, Ron, when I've been watching back Danilo. Yes, we all get excited by players because of what they can do on the ball, and that's really important. I think Rangers, especially those Old Firm games at Hampden, they were really defined not only by mistakes in the defence, but the lack of match winners, the lack of excitement in the final thirds. But something that Michael Beale spoke about a lot last season when he arrived, and it's actually the word he used, or the phrase he used to criticise Alfredo Morelos a lot, was he'd speak about energy in the final thirds. And in Lammers and Dessers and Danilo, I think you've got three players that can defend from the front. And that's really important, because I think for Michael Beale's team to play how they want to play, you need to play with a high line, and you need to be compact and aggressive. And for that to work, your pressure at the front needs to be right. So that's maybe something that goes under the radar a little bit, but I do think that's going to be very important for Danilo and Dessers and Lammers, the way that they're going to be able to press from the front and give off the ball, as well as what hopefully they'll bring on the ball, which is goals and creativity.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't seen this until I read your piece yesterday, but I mean, those pressure regains and press numbers are, exceptionally high. Like you mentioned there, I also thought it was quite, and just in terms of Morelos, obviously during his time in Rangers, he was a fantastic player, and he had some, unbelievable highs, especially European games. But I mean, last season, what he was offering in terms of the ball work, just simply wasn't acceptable, wasn't good enough. And Michael B alluded to that, and looking at those numbers, you'd hope and you'd expect Danilo to really transform Rangers in terms of off the ball work up front. And what I also noticed on the game against Hoffenheim, this is a weird thing you pick up when you're at the game, was Sam Lammers' role in the press.
Yeah,
I thought he was incredibly proactive, not just in terms of pressing, but also initiating that and kind of organising that. He's a lot more vocal than I thought he would be. And also, maybe if he's playing a number 10 position behind two strikers, if you've got someone in there who's maybe directing them and helping them press in there, I think that could be really, really efficient. And you obviously seen it against Newcastle as well, when you've seen, how proactive Lammers can be in the press when you went and won the ball. I think it was it Bruno
yeah, it was.
And he obviously scored. So that's kind of another indication of how Rangers might play out of possession. And I expect them to really play on the front foot. And I think as much as pre-season, it's more about performances and looking into little tactical things that the Rangers might do. I'd be interested to see how they go after Kilmarnock at 5:15 on Saturday. I expect them to be very much, on the front foot in their faces and go after them from the first whistle.
Yeah, well, and we'll get into all that. Lots of comments coming in, which we'll get to as well. But I think you're spot on about Lammers. He won the ball back maybe 4 or 5 times throughout the game, and there was a moment where he kind of started the move for Dessers, and Dessers took the ball. I think it was on the left side, and Kabak just got his body back in. But that happened numerous times throughout the game, and I think there's a clear pattern with all the players that Beale has signed in the front line that they're going to be really good pressers as well. And it's just such an important part, I think, of his game. Again, we spoke about this in the podcast before, but before he went to Brazil and before he was at Rangers, he was Liverpool under-23 manager, and his job as Liverpool under-23 manager was to get players into Jurgen Klopp's team. And the best way to do that, obviously, you need to, I guess, play in a similar style, because if you want to go and play centre-half for Liverpool's first team, but you don't spend your youth career defending on the halfway line, you're not going to be able to do it. You need to be able to bridge that gap for players as well. And he's spoken about that in numerous kind of podcasts I've listened to. So I think you see a lot of the similar off-ball principles, whether it be just how compact Rangers are, the importance of pressure at the front in his team, and yeah, definitely having good pressers in that front line is really important. Danilo is arriving though to score goals, Euan. That's the most, I guess, pressing matter to if you pardon my pun. That's what Rangers did really lack last season. Lots of comments coming in about that. CGM55 saying, I think Dessers will score more goals for us. Regardless of who starts up top at the weekend, and we'll get into Sima because I see a lot of comments about him as well. Rangers now have 4 or 5, if you include Kemar Roofe, different profiles of strikers. They have a lot of options, and 6 if you include Sakala, who we'll also talk about. If you look at Danilo's record over the last few years, he's always kind of stayed in line with his expected goals. He's not played loads of football in the last couple of seasons, but you'd be pretty confident from watching him. And again, it's highlighted a lot in this piece. I think his movement in the box is really good. I think he's going to get you traditional poacher goals that Rangers have not scored in the last number of years at all. And that is what he'll ultimately be judged against, because when you come in for that amount of money, people are going to expect a high goal return domestically, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at it and say Danilo and Dessers avoid injury and they play in the majority of the games, I think you're looking at minimum 30 goals between them in the Scottish Premiership this season. That's been a little bit pessimistic. I think maybe the target should be a little bit higher than that. But I think if you get, say 15 each between them, then that'd be a kind of really good starting place if you look at, how many goals Morelos got last season in comparison. So I think I'd probably go higher, but you don't want to be, put too much pressure on them or anything like that. But I think you should be looking at 35, 40 goals between the two of them if they're playing 30 games a season, and how much Rangers are going to expect it to dominate the ball and be on the front foot. So I think it'll be really up to them to kind of get the goals to, fire Rangers to the title. That is the major objective this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's move on. I want to talk about, before we get into Fashion Sakala, and we're going to talk about the game at the weekend. We'll continue to build up to that. We'll have the big preview on Friday, and amongst lots of other content coming on the website. But staying on the theme of the front line, Euan, Abdallah Sima is also someone that you saw at the weekend over in Hoffenheim. Andrew Smith here saying, I think Sima will come good. We'll need different solutions in games as the season goes on. I think that's a really good point. Dave saying, I do Sima from the bench and have a frontline attack of Dessers, Danilo, Lammers and Cantwell, with Raskin, Dowell and Jack sitting in front of the defence. And Stevenio here saying, what's your impression of Sima so far? I'm surprised the club sanctioned a loan when funds may be around the corner from player exits. We'll get into all that, Euan, but what's been your impressions of Sima so far? Because, we spoke about this a lot at the live show, or not a lot, but a fair amount at the live show on Friday. I think he's going to be an effective player for Rangers. I think he's coming on a loan deal, and I think that shows how much Michael Beale wants his profile in there, because he spoke in January about not really wanting short-term solutions. But I think that the comment there from Andrew kind of nails it. It's about having different solutions. And you've already seen the varied positions he can play, and I think you've seen some of the attributes he'll bring. But what did you make of him at the weekend and kind of so far his time at Rangers today? We should say it's pre-season, isn't it? And I mean, this is, I guess, with all these podcasts so far, we won't really know until the competitive football begins.
Yeah, I'd certainly echo that point about being pre-season. Look, I don't think there's no point, dressing up. I don't think he's been super impressive so far. But I do think he could be an effective player. It's pre-season. He's just getting to know his teammates and things like that. So I wouldn't kind of read too much into the performances in pre-season. But I understand why some people are maybe looking at it and thinking, he's not at the level where they thought they would be. I think there's a huge amount of excitement when they came into the club, and it's early days. I wouldn't read too much at all into pre-season. I think he's quick. In terms of his stature, he's a lot bigger physically than I initially thought. I think that could be a real advantage, and he offers, like you said, Josh, with the flexibility to play a number of positions. He's predominantly played up top in pre-season, but on the weekend, Michael Beale went to kind of. He said before the game it was a 4-4-2, but essentially it was kind of a 4-2-3-1 because Lammers was constantly dropping off. Dexter's looking to link play, but Sima played on the right hand side, and there was a couple of moments of promise, but I think Michael Beale and the Rangers fans will obviously expect to see more from him in the coming weeks. I think at the moment a lot of people are certainly the way it can sometimes be framed as looking at Sima in comparison with Sakala. And people talk about, Sakala looks like he's exiting the club, and can Sima provide what Sakala does? And I think that's a comparison a lot of people make. But we'll go on to Sakala. But I think that Sima will essentially maybe take his minutes in the squad this season.
Yeah, I think they're actually quite different players because Sima. I think, as mentioned, I've spoken about him quite a lot because I think he's someone who, when I watched him initially, I thought domestically might frustrate people at points because he's not like a Lammers. He's not got a Velcro touch, and he's not a kind of player that when you watch him you think he's gonna be excellent. Maybe necessarily in a possession dominant team, but I think there's a few things to consider as we've spoken about before. One is the role he's going to play, and we've seen him already play lots of different roles. I think he's more confident on the right hand side. He actually did brilliantly to set up a chance for Lammers in the first half at Hoffenheim. He did the same to set up that chance for Matondo. It's a classic of, if those two chances are converted, then suddenly this conversation is, look at these two goals he's created in transition from the right. And I think his final ball from the right is actually quite good. I think he's more composed on the ball than Sakala. Although, of course, I guess when you're running with the ball at times, you're going to lose it. But the things I think he'll give you in this Rangers team is he's going to give you that ability to stretch teams over distance. And for Sakala's pace, I don't think he gives you that. Can you think of a single time or a game where Rangers have maybe played against the ball and they've had Sakala as the last man who's stretching the game constantly in time and runs in behind? He's always caught offside, whereas Sima, I think, is probably a more intelligent mover. I think his movement's better. He curves his run, and I think that extends to what he'll give you at the back post as well. I don't think he'll be a first striker. I think it'll always be a Dessers or Danilo, but I could see it working well if you've got a Dessers and a Lammers there, both of which can play with their back to goal, or Danilo bring the ball in different ways, and Sima's kind of adding on to that. You bring up Sakala, though. Reports in the Daily Mail this morning, Euan, that a fresh bid has been launched from Saudi Arabia for his services. I don't believe he was at the open training yesterday, which obviously fuels speculation and open season of the transfer market. We've spoke about this before. Sakala's numbers are hard to argue with. For the minutes he's played, his underlying numbers are pretty good as well. But my opinion on this is, if you look at those four players that Beale has in the final third now with Ruth as well, there's been a complete overhaul of that position. You need players that you can really rely upon, and that's why I think the eye test is important with Sakala as well. And at times you have to be ruthless and think, well, for the money you might be able to bring in for, say, him and Cholak, that can be better spent elsewhere. Is that an opinion that you agree with? Because let's be honest, for all the business that Rangers have done and are about to do with Cifuentes, and I think many would hope one more would come in the form of a defender as well, they still need to trim down the squad, don't they?
Yeah, the squad needs trimmed, and if Sakala's not, you look at it at the moment, he's probably fourth choice striker. If he's not going to get minutes, and then Rangers can get a good fee for him, I think it makes sense to sell him. I think the fee muted today was around £3 million, which represents obviously a decent profit. Of course, they could have came on a free transfer, Sakala. So, in terms of balancing the books, it's good. It's good money. I don't know. Would you maybe hold out for more money for Sakala? I know the Saudis are, they're not short of a few quid. Could it be the case that Rangers maybe sit and hold out for a little bit more money for him? Because there's clearly interest in the player. The fact he wasn't in Germany and the fact that he wasn't at the open training session, and what Michael Beale kind of, I wouldn't say sort of dodged the question, but you can kind of read between the lines sometimes with managers and their kind of body language and what they're saying. So I think Sakala is definitely one that's available to leave the club this summer. I don't think that's any startling revelation. So he's probably
is an argument, Euan, that you've got those 4 players that we've mentioned that you maybe keep him because if you're not relying on him, he can still bring something. Because let's not, you can't also rewrite history. That at times we're going to come on to speak about Kilmarnock away, and I think at times away from home he was so effective last season. You think of that, the game at Tynecastle, the game at Easter Road. He created Morelos' goal the last time Rangers went to Rugby Park. Away at Motherwell, he always scores about 15 goals at Fir Park, doesn't he? He is someone that maybe gives you that threat from the left. And is there an argument that, again, I see a lot of comments at the moment about do Rangers lack width? And I don't think that's too much of an issue because you saw last season when Beale came in, they took care of the run-of-the-mill league games quite successfully. But is there an argument that with only really Sima providing pace in the final third, that if you lose Sakala, you although you're not losing that maybe direct running threat in behind, you are losing a bit of pace off the left that you're not going to have with anyone else? Or I guess you can't have everything in a squad, can you?
Yeah, I think it's imperative that Rangers recoup some money in the window. They've spent quite a bit of money. The board have backed Beale and need to bring in money from player sales. If I was a list of players that you'd look to sell, Sakala certainly wouldn't be at the top of it. I'd have players in front of him. I'd have the likes of Scott Wright, Glenn Kamara, John McLaughlin. I'd even probably sell Yanis Hadji before I'd ideally sell Fashion Sakala. He's just such a difficult player to analyse because he's consistently inconsistent. He can frustrate 1 minute and then just do something the next minute that can be so effective for the team. I think your point is good. His pace is a weapon. His numbers, especially under Beale, have been pretty good. Certainly from attacking point of view, they've been the best in the squad. But it's just in terms of, is he going to play regularly next season? Does he fit into what Beale wants to do? And the other thing is he can get good money, and it also represents a massive profit on the player. So, from the player trading model, he fits in exactly to that. Also, his energy, I think, can be infectious at times. He works incredibly hard. It's a real difficult one with Sakala, but I think the expectation is that he will go.
Yeah, absolutely right. I want to talk just before the end. I want to raise a few comments. I'm seeing a lot of this. Luke saying lack of width in the team, noticed it in every pre-season game. I think, again, we've spoke about this before so far. Rangers have, in my opinion, organised these pre-season games to perfect or try and perfect them. They obviously haven't perfected it because they've conceded goals, but work on their shape off the ball and tried out different formations off the ball. It will look very different to the game on Saturday because they will have a lot of the ball. On the topic of width, Euan, before we just get into the away game, this is kind of what they did last season as well. And I think the difference between Beale to Gerrard, one of the key differences is there is more real fluidity and flexibility in the final third. So you have someone like Cantwell, who I think can thrive under this. He almost has autonomy of where he can pick the ball up. And I think that's just as effective because you're always going to have the fullback stretching the pitch, and teams will respond to that in different ways. But it wasn't something that I thought necessarily was a problem last season. I don't know about you. I think Beale's going to start with 2 strikers in every game or most games, but I think it will take different forms, and you'll see him be quite flexible dependent on the opposition. I mean, is that width something that concerns you, or just think again it's a byproduct of a few pre-season games that haven't exactly been overwhelmingly positive?
Yeah, I think it is, and I can understand why people maybe are questioning it because you look at the squad. There's only one winger in it, maybe 2 if you include Sakala, but he's played quite centrally under Beale. Rangers aren't going to play with wingers this season. They're going to play with 2 strikers, and I think the width will come from the fullbacks. From Tavernier, and you'd anticipate Yilmaz to start predominantly on the left-hand side. So I mean, I can understand that people are looking at it and there's not a lot of width in the squad, and people like wingers, exciting players, but I think Rangers will play differently, and the width will come from the fullbacks. And I think, especially domestically, when Rangers are they're expected to dominate every game, apart from obviously their main rivals. So. we're going to have a lot of the ball, and the fullbacks can really push on, and you'll see that. In terms of maybe they're playing European games, I think maybe the question of width comes more into it, in terms of if Rangers are playing a little bit more defensively and they have less of the ball, if they're counter-attacking, having that pace. And just mentioned with Sakala, having Sima's pace especially could be a real threat on the counter attack. You've seen it with Ryan Kent over the years in European competition, that he maybe thrived a little bit more when he had that bit more space to run into. So maybe in Europe it comes into maybe a bit more of a concern. I don't know what you think on that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Rangers don't really play with wingers, although you think back to the last day of the season against St Mirren, where they did try something a bit different. And again, I just think that Beale has been a lot more kind of tactically flexible than people realise. I don't think he's just done one thing. I think he's adapted it a lot. And you've got someone like Lammers. He's not a winger, but he is going to give you that one-on-one threat in a squad. And I think you need a few of those people who can just outplay by taking the ball beyond someone. So it is one to watch. You've got obviously Cifuentes coming in, who's going to give you that different profile in the midfield. And there is a reality just coming on to the game at the weekend, Euan. Rangers will have signed 9 players this summer when Cifuentes arrives, and 11 since January. That is a lot. There's a reason that most clubs don't do these rebuilds in one summer. And there is an element, because of the way that pre-season has been done, which I think, again, has been about preparing for these European games. I think, incidentally, the Hamburg performance at home was very good in that regard. There's been lots of other details against dotted around other games that have provoked concern for people. But we've not really seen the team in the style that we're going to see come Saturday. And what I mean by that is Rangers playing with a lot of the ball, whatever front three, plays. And Stevie's column, which is on the website, excellent column this morning, it's linked in the description to this video as well, kind of reflects on that. And Stevie will be on later in the week, and you can all look forward to his pre-season preview or big season preview. But in short, yeah, this is going to be very new, and players are going to be gelling, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that'll take time to see the best version. But simultaneously, Rangers need to win on Saturday, then they need to win on Wednesday. And that is the tension that I guess makes this month, as every season starting month is so big. But I guess there's just a little bit more of the stretch into the unknown, because all these players have arrived and we're yet to really see them in a game where they've had a lot of the ball playing as a unit. And that will come at Rugby Park on Saturday night, won't it?
Yeah, and also with pre-season, I mean, Michael Beale's not been able to name his best back four.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a big thing. I think people were really critical of the performance in the first half and on Saturday against Hoffenheim, and justifiably so. But I mean, it's incredibly difficult. You're putting in a centre-back partnership of young Jeffco and Balogun, who, I doubt they'll ever start for Rangers again together. So it's not ideal in terms of building relationships. You'd want Suter and Goldson, or Goldson and Davies to be playing, just to build that kind of that familiarity. Too early for me to get that word out, and that bond at the start of the season. So I think you'll definitely see. Probably leads on to our teams for the weekend, but I think you'll definitely see Suter back in the lineup in the weekend.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think you're right. I mean, we won't know until the real football starts, but I think you're right about the back four. That's such an important. We saw Connor Goldson yesterday. Whether he's going to be ready for Saturday, we'll see. He has come back early from setbacks before, and we're going to talk about what team we'd start on Saturday in the next couple of days. We'll have the graphics up to take everyone through the teams. We'll have Chris Jack on before the end of the week, Stevie as well. Lots of content coming your way. Until then, I think we'll leave it there for today. Again, loads of content for you on the website. Remember, today or tomorrow, is the last chance to take advantage of our flash sale. £12 for 12 months, covers you for the entire season. It supports our work and next summer as well, which hopefully will be reflecting on a successful season for Rangers. Until then, thanks very much for watching. Thank you to Euan for joining, and we'll speak to you